Thank you. Thank you for having me here. My name is Marc Hassenzahl. I'm a professor for experience and interaction design at the Folkwang University of Arts. So it's an art school here in industrial design. I'm a psychologist by training. I also studied computer science, and somehow I ended up in this design business. So I'm a little bit of everything, more psychologist, a little bit of technologist, and also a bit of a designer or an artist. I know you're here because you want to know something about experience design, or you want to know something about interaction design, but for today, since we have a little bit of time for this presentation, I would like to start with the real reason, or the root maybe, for this experience design, why we do it. And this beginning, the starting point is actually happiness, human happiness. So since 2000 there are a lot of happiness studies going on, and what we know is that, of course, a bit of happiness, so let's say the variation among the people here in the room in terms of their happiness, is a consequence of heritage, of genes, of the body, of how our body works. A little bit is also the consequence of the circumstances we live in. So are we in a rich country, are we in a poor country? But there's still a big part left. Some people judge about 40% that is due to our activities. So the happiness comes from the things we do on a daily basis. And some people do things that make them more happy, and other people do things that make them less happy. So there is a little bit of possibility to change things by these activities. Now, what is a meaningful activity that makes you happy? So what we actually do is we do things in our daily lives which fulfill psychological needs. So there are some basic needs we have. For example, the need for relatedness, for feeling close to other people. And when we engage in an activity in a day and have this feeling of being close to somebody, then it was a positive, meaningful experience. Yeah, so when let's say you're lonely and you pick up the phone and you call a friend and you have a nice chat, then you engaged in an activity which becomes meaningful and positive because in the end of the day it fulfills a need, feeling close to somebody, related to somebody. This relationship between need fulfillment, there are lists of needs, I will talk about them more later, but the list of needs, some systems says 20 or some says only 3, but in general, all people agree that it's about being autonomous, being competent, being popular, being stimulated, feeling related to other people, and maybe also about rituals and feeling secure. So there's a common set of things we all like, yeah? But we do many different things to fulfill those. This relationship between need fulfillment and positive feeling, positive affect, is very well supported. So for example, Sheldon did a study about memories of positive life events, so people were asked, could you remember a positive event in your life? And then they used questionnaires to measure certain things, and what turned out is that the more positive the event, the more intense need fulfillment was in that episode. Or Howell did a diary study. So they asked every evening, they asked people how positive was your day, and also asked about the activities they did. And the people that engaged in more meaningful activities had a better day and felt more positive. Like this activity. The consequence of this is, and that's the first step, that we can make ourselves happy. So whatever we choose to do will make us more happy or unhappy. Now the next step is that these practices we engage in, making a telephone call, talking with people and so on, is very much shaped by things. So, for example, here in the theory of social practices, it's really acknowledged that there are almost no activities, human activities, which don't involve objects and things. And these things are not just neutral and there, but what they do is they enable certain things, they limit other activities, they embody knowledge, they have a good deal of impact on how we do things. So if you, for example, eat your food with a spoon or with chopsticks, will make a difference in terms of how fast you eat, how the food has to be cooked, how much you eat, and so on. So the object also determines a bit of the activity. And Ide, for example, he's a well-known philosopher in technology. He said that human life is, even in its most primitive form, is unthinkable without technology. So there are no real humans that can't crush rocks or make fire or so. Yeah? We always have technology. And Bruce Sterling, who's also a well-known science fiction writer, but also a bit of a technology philosophist, said it's for us it's but much easier to mentally divide humans and objects. You know, humans are the animate things, and objects are kind of neutral, inanimate tools or so. But what they actually are like very independent and self-regulating systems. So it's not, you can't really separate tools, humans and their tools. There's, for example, a psychological study where they ask people to point out the middle of the forearm. So you have to put your arm like this and just point where the middle is. And when you hold a tool, like a wrench, then this middle goes down. Just because you incorporate this tool as a part of your body. So, stuff like that. I guess still, I mean, you can accept that, but still the common view is to view things somehow as neutral, as things that reflect our human nature and not as something that shape our human nature. So we're always starting from the humans, I would say. Let me give you an example of that, and you can see whether you know what would be your interpretation. This is from a study of PIF. What they did is that they studied different things, but in this setup, they had this crosswalk in an American city, and they had this person here as a confederate of the researcher, and when the car was approaching, the person stepped up, and the question was, does the driver stop for the pedestrian or not? So you have the setup here, this car is coming. Can you see what car it is? BMW. It's a nice BMW, and will this person stop? No. Will the driver stop? Who thinks the driver will stop? So, raise the hands for stopping. Okay. Oh. Oh. So this was actually a study of social class and unethical behavior, and it turned out that the higher the status of the car, the more frequently the pedestrian was ignored. So 35% on average ignored the pedestrian, 45% in the highest status group, car-wise, yeah, because you couldn't see the people, you just could see the car, and 0% in the lowest. What is the explanation for that? It's the driver, isn't it? I mean, some people just need these cars and they behave in a certain way. And that's how the authors also, without hesitation, interpreted. So they looked at the car and said it's an indicator of the social class and the behavior of that person. So the car kind of expresses this behavior. But that's not necessarily true, you know? It can be the other way around as well. Have you ever driven in a very sporty BMW? Who has this as experience, like being on a motorway? And yeah, I tried it as well, and suddenly I found myself on the left lane, a little bit too fast and a little bit too self-contained. Do you have something like this as well? I mean,
yeah, but I wouldn't say that the car matters that much. If you're on a highway, then you can do it Japanese restaurant
as well. But don't you think that the type of car also kind of makes it more likely that you behave in that way? That would be my proposition.
I would say
that even if you don't like cars and don't like sporty driving so much, maybe when you sit in that car, because how it is designed, how it feels, how the whole thing interacts with you, you will find yourself going a little bit faster than you actually wanted. And this is this feedback which is very important for this idea of experience design. So we assume as a group, or I assume that what people do is the consequence of this interplay of what we want to do and what the actually object and environment offers us. And since we don't design people, but we design the environments, we also kind of design what people do at the end of the day. And that's actually the definition then of experience design. So for me, it's about shaping practices, so activities in daily life, in a way that they are more need fulfilling. And this shaping happens through technology, through the objects, how they are designed. But what it's really about is about that experience. And from a design perspective, are there any designers here? So from a design perspective, but also maybe from a computer science perspective, that has certain implications, which are important for the beginning of this language. So first of all, we need to make well-being a dedicated goal of design. So people want to feel, we want to make things that make people happy through their activities. That is the goal. It's not about selling more, it's not about making something especially useful or fast or whatever. It's about creating things that at the end of the day create meaningful experiences to people. And it can be that sometimes, for example, inefficiency is a means you need to do. Yeah? Writing a letter with a fountain pen is very inefficient in that way. It's not fast, but it has certain qualities which may lead to a very fulfilling experience. Okay, that's this idea. The next thing is that we need to do this design of practices and experiences, the next part of the design process. Typically, especially in technology design, you do technology, you design interfaces, you design shapes, you design objects, but then you give it to people and in a way leave it a little bit to the people what they do with it. You have a certain idea how it could be used, but in a way it's their job, to appropriate it, to make use of it in the daily life. But you could also design it, what you want, that the experience that happened to them. You just turn that around. An important mean for that is interaction. So when you want to shape an activity, it's very much about interaction. That's why interaction design is kind of the best start for doing something like this. And you would need to better understand the relationship between things and the resulting experiences. That's like the research problem. So my conclusion here is, as a beginning, so to say, is that I understand artifacts not as things, but like as material tales, as stories. And it's like we tell these stories through these objects, and we hope that people experience these stories and then have a better life. So the first question is, any questions so far? Okay, because that's the general goal. Now I would like to show you some research we do and some examples later on of design just to explore this idea. So the first thing you can ask yourself is, does the way we do things really matter? I mean, we do things in many different ways. This is the example of preparing coffee. I guess some of you drink tea, but many drink coffee. You have coffee makers at home. We do it in many different ways. And at the end of the day, you have your coffee. So does this, how the way you prepare the coffee really has an impact on happiness, on need satisfaction? That would be a viable question. And we did a little study and compared two ways of making coffee. Yeah? The one was a little bit more manually. You can see here the general setup. So you grind the beans. Takes a while. Well, you don't have to watch the whole grinding. And then she uses an Italian espresso maker. All kinds of problems. So we asked this person to prepare coffee like this, and then there was a second condition. So it was a so-called within subjects design. So every person did both, but in different sequences. And the second way of doing was with a Senseo pet coffee maker. So what we did, we did that, and then we asked people, we gave people different questionnaires. We used Shannon's questionnaire about need fulfillment. So we asked them different needs, how intense this experience was. We used the PANAS, which is a questionnaire to measure positive and negative feelings. And we measured the time on task, so how long it took it. And then we asked them about the most negative and most positive moments and analyzed them in a qualitative way. And what you would expect theory-wise is that when you prepare it manually, that need fulfillment should be more intense. Especially, you should feel more competence because you're doing it on your own. And it should be more stimulatory because you have contact with the materials, you can smell and so on. So, and it should be then, maybe it should be more positive in general. So that would be the prediction, the expectations. And this is what actually came out of it. So here are the needs, and the yellows are those, and the triangles are automated coffee making, the intensity of need fulfillment in automated coffee making, and the squares is in the more manual. And the orange bars are where these differences are statistically significant, and you can see that in general, making the coffee manually you feel more competent and you feel more stimulated by doing that, which in general raises the intensity of need fulfillment. And then, because of that, you also feel more positive. What happens, so to say, is that the experience through doing it with a machine, it becomes flat. It's not negative. It's not like you don't like doing it with a Senseo pad, but it just becomes not as intense. You don't get as much out of it. And that has many consequences. For example, people are much more outcome oriented. So the quality of the coffee mattered much more in the Senseo condition than in the other condition. And they become much more impatient. The interesting thing was, on average, preparing the coffee with manually took about 13 minutes. Nobody complained about waiting time. The pad machine takes about 3 minutes, and 90% of people complained about waiting times. So, although, it's just 3 minutes, I mean, what can you complain in 3 minutes? Don't understand that as a call for doing everything by hand or so. That's not what's implied here. The only thing I want to show is that in both cases, we prepare coffee, we have different tools we give people, we arrange the tools differently, and they basically experience it and get more or less happiness out of it. And we can show that. And it has many consequences on the way we feel. And that's the first step that's important, that we can actually argue that we should engage more in this kind of design, because if that wouldn't work, it doesn't make much sense. We don't need to do it. So let's go a little step further. This was just, everyone was a bit designed because we selected the tools, but it was just an experience that happened. Now we ask ourselves, can we deliberately design it? Can we build more need fulfillment into an object? So we were interested in keeping little secrets. All of us, we like to have little secrets, yeah, because it's good for our feeling of privacy and autonomy, yeah. So it's just, in psychology, people know that, especially, for example, in close relationships, if you're really close, then it's nice to have a little secret, maybe not something that endangers your relationship, but one that reminds you of that you're being a single person and that you have something on your own. So we tried to get that into an object, yeah, a little secret. But what we also did is that we asked people how they interact with secrets. So what is the perfect way, how should it feel interacting with a secret? And they told us that to reveal a secret should be slow, should be gentle, to emphasize appreciation. And then when somebody comes, concealing must be instantaneous, fast. Yeah? And then physical contact is really important. So you kind of want to touch your secret in a way. If it's, for example, an object. And we try to put that into an interaction. So we designed a prototype of a digital picture frame that has a secret picture. Yeah, so you have your standard pictures and there's a secret picture. We need that, and the question is, how do you reveal that? And we had two different ways of doing it. One was rather technical, I would say. So just let me show you how it works. So you have this, you're in this office situation. Here's a little remote. And now the guy wants to take a sneak peek at the secret picture, grabs the remote, presses it, sees the picture, and then it's a very simple, very usable, non-problematic interaction, yeah? Technical. But it doesn't have the features of revealing a secret, okay? So let me show you another version of it, which tries to express all this we found in the interviews. Just a different interaction, nothing else. So now we did a study with that. In this study, we just showed people the videos because we wanted to have a larger participation number. And we know from prior studies that you can show people these scenarios and then ask them to imagine they would be this person, and then you get okay results for this kind of research. So participants saw both videos, and then were asked to vividly imagine being the user, and we had over 250 people. And again, we used PANAS to measure positive affect, and then we used something called the privacy function rating scale, which has some subscales: autonomy, rejuvenation, contemplation, and that is exactly for secrets. So the idea would be that if it's the same, it's the same functionality, it's a secret picture, only with two different interactions. But the idea is that the interaction that fits the need, that fits this privacy secrecy idea, leads to higher need fulfillment. That means higher values on this and more positive experiences. That would be the expectation. And in fact, that actually happens. So this again is with the feeling, the experience with the remote, and this is the feeling with this caress interaction, and all these differences are significant. So it's more positive, you feel more autonomy, you feel more contemplation and more rejuvenation. And this is interesting, because that shows that at least that you can deliberately design for certain experiences, with certain interactions, and that although you offer the same functionality, you make people a little bit happy with this. You still don't know what happens after the second time you use it, or when you really use it, or so. There are many open questions. But this is the basic test. If that wouldn't work, you shouldn't really care. Then you can do it, you could do it in any way you want to do it. These are very like lab experimental oriented stuff, but we also do that in the field. So let me show you this project. That is something we did with BMW. And what we did is, what Martin Knobel, who did that, set out was to start from the need. So he asked people, it was about social, the relatedness feelings. He asked people about situations where they feel close to other people, felt related to other people, and the car was somehow involved. So we get some stories like we had a good chat with a friend on our traveling to somewhere. So we got different studies. And one that popped out was driving in a motor car. So imagine you're going to a place somewhere that the group is larger than fits into one car, and people go as a group. They use 2 different cars maybe, and they have a certain practices attached to this. For example, they try to stay together. Sometimes they try to, sometimes they overtake each other and then they do some messaging. Sometimes they have walkie-talkies and talk to each other in that. So they have a way of designing this drive so that they feel more related. We took that knowledge from the people that experienced high relatedness and tried to build it into a system. So that, let's say, you never drove together as a group and you don't really know how to do that best, the system would know that. The system would have the knowledge and shapes your driving in a way that at the end of the day, when you had this drive with your friends, you said, oh, I felt much closer to them. It was like the drive already started when we started, not when the holiday started when we started, not when we reached our destination. What did we do? It was technology-wise, it was really simple. So you have these 2 cars, and one function was when if the cars are in proximity, you can chat. So you have an audio channel, and you can listen to the others. You can hear the sounds from the other thing. And also we changed the navigation, both given the destination, but the following car is always navigated to the leading car. And it's also like a bond, like a leash. It was designed so that you always can see that you belong together. Then we built a functional prototype, tried it out. So we had a number of groups. They had 2 cars. They could go anywhere, 200 kilometers. And then we recorded it. And at the end, we interviewed them. So that's just a bit of how they use it. And then some of the...
Well, it was just like when you're sitting together at a table in a group, drinking some coffee, and everybody is talking to each other. It should feel like the others were sitting in the same car, and that's pretty close to what it was like.
As if, I would say, as if you would be sitting together in a big van, the others sitting in the rear, and you're sitting in the front, and you're just chatting.
So we again used the questionnaires, and there was high relatedness values for this when people use that. And just some quotes here, you already saw them. It feels as if the friends in the other car are sitting in the back seat. I had the impression that the interiors of the 2 cars merged. If you drive with a group in more than one car, you have to decide with whom to sit together and with whom to talk to, because so most of the time you spend the whole trip in that one car. This has now been done away with because everybody can talk with each other, or thanks to the communication and the navigation, we all drove together. It was a shared drive. So in a way, we put in some technology and people then used it, and this experience we wanted them to have, this relatedness experience, re-emerged in a way. And that shows that you can actually also in the field design experiences into objects and make sure that they will emerge later on. And you don't need very particular complicated technology. So it's not about technology, it's about the exact way how it is designed and the details. So it matters that it only opens in proximity, and it matters to figure out how close it should be to open. All this stuff matters, but the fact that you can talk to each other is not the primary thing. So it's all in the interaction. If it's, for example, too close, you will never talk to each other. If it's too far away, you feel obliged to, you always listen into the others. You can't really play with this driving, letting yourself go back a bit, be private, and then drive to the others again. That's not possible. And that's the thing you would figure out in interaction and experience, and not so much, and then the technology. So through this bundle of functionality and interaction, we established and shaped the practice, and that led to a positive experience. I think it's helpful to have a little model. I will go through that very quickly, very briefly, but it's important to know on what level we talk. I think it's good to distinguish 3 different levels. One is the what, so we're talking about functionality. In this case, it's like I can speak to the others, or I can see through the navigation where the others are. I find that that's all very concrete things people want to do. Yeah, I want to talk to somebody, and there's functionality that provides that. Beneath that is the question of how we actually design it. So the question of form of interaction. And I already showed you that this can have many, many different ways. You can do it in many, many different ways. And the question of which one is good depends on the reason, let's say the experience you want to create, the needs you want to fulfill. So if you, for example, use talking to each other because you want to create relatedness, you need to design it in a different way. You need to consider things that people need when they're close to each other or when they're not close to each other. And it's something completely different when this talking is about exchange of information, for example. For example, in this case of the car, the audio wasn't really good because it was an experimental prototype. It didn't matter. What mattered was listening to music. Because the moment you drive together and you connect both interiors, 2 music systems are running, yeah? And you have to negotiate which music to listen to. And that was much more interesting than actually talking to each other. And this is something that is not given through functionality, it stems from here. But when you design technology, typically, you don't care about that. You just look for functions and ways to invoke these functions in an easy way, in a usable and efficient way also. If you take this into account, you need to think more about what functionality to put in, what would be the right thing, and how to interact with it. We call this the aesthetics of interaction, down here, which goes beyond mere efficiency or usability. And you need to know something about this. This is the whole needs things I talked about. So if I like to arrange the words, the concepts I use, this up there is a need. The need is the source for the positive feeling. That's very close together. Yeah? This was a good experience because I felt so close to somebody, and I felt good about it. Or I did something really good and was very competent and proud about it. This is the core of the experience, so to say. Then the really important thing is the practice. So we feel proud about many, many things. Everybody of you has the need now and then to feel proud and to be competent. But we do it in very, very different ways. Some people build model trains, others knit, others make music, others drive sporty cars. You have many, many different ways of doing it. And that's actually the practice. So what are the activities we choose to fulfill these needs? And a part of this practice is the interaction with the object. So each practice brings with it a certain interaction. And this is actually the whole bundle of what we design when we do experience design. So you're not just building an interaction for some scenario, but you think about the emotions you want to create, the needs you want to fulfill, identify a practice, and build the product that you can sell. It's the other way around, as normal. And maybe a last word. Classically, in utility theory, people always think that the functionality is the core value, and that this is symbolic value. So it's a phone, and if it's nicely designed, and you can envy you can make your neighbor envy, then this is symbolic additional value. But the core value is still the telephone. From an experience design perspective, it's the other way around. To have this feeling, this popularity because it's the actual goal, and you happen to use your phone to achieve that. And this is a big difference in thinking. So far so good? You're so quiet. Do you have questions? Am I so clear, or are you so overwhelmed? Or okay. So let's go a step further. I like to place experience design in the context of happiness, and but the general problem is that we don't always know what makes us happy, and we're not always engaging in things that makes us happy. So we have practices, but we don't have necessarily good practices. And many objects we have even invite bad practices. Let's say, for example, everybody knows, and there are studies about it, that a good family dinner, sit down at the table and take at least 20 minutes to eat together, is very, very helpful for all relationships in the family. But the TV can invite people to skip that. And everybody would say, like, oh no, I don't want to sit at that table and talk to you, I want to watch television. But the practice that is behind the practice they skip will make them maybe unhappy. Or it would be better for their life to do that. That makes it a bit complicated. The example I showed you with driving in a motor car is very easy. Yeah? So nobody can really object to that. Yeah? We want to go together to Paris in 2 cars. I have this cool app. Let's do it. But what problem do I have? At the end, the trip was a little bit nicer. There is no barrier in that. But when you really design for happiness, you come across many, many situations where people actually don't want to engage in practices you want to give them. Let me give you an example. And I did a lot of, for 4 years now, I did work with car companies, so I have many car examples. Let's say you have this technology, and this technology prevents social contact and exchange, so it encapsulates you and you can't talk to anybody anymore, which is not good from a social point of perspective, and happy and social, be social is, a good chat is the most important thing to feel happy. So it also alienates from the natural environment, so you can't feel the wind, and you can't feel the sun, and you can't feel anything anymore. Everything is very sterile and also encapsulated. And when you use this technology, you create a lot of conflict. Now I can redesign this. I make it in a way that it fosters sociability and good conversations, it promotes touch with nature, and it turns you, in a certain situation, into quite a popular person. So, I will show you that technology, but I learned that I need to explain maybe something before. In Germany we have, I don't know whether you have it here as well, but we have zones where cars can enter, but actually the space is shared. So the car is supposed to go not faster than step speed, so 7 kilometers or 5 kilometers per hour, and everybody has the same right. So if children are playing on that street, it's allowed, and the car has to kind of navigate that. Yeah. So that's certain situations we have. And now we designed the technology for this situation. So you get the idea. Yeah? Why not just stepping out of the car, pulling it through this area? You will always have the right speed. We tried it out. I mean, a student is sitting here like a small student there operating the car. The other is pretending to pull it. We tried it out here in Essen in this pedestrian zone. You have very nice conversations with the other people. The other drivers still recognize you as a driver. You're never too fast. You don't really disturb anything. Yeah? And technology-wise, it's also really doable and a challenge. So the guys at BMW told me that it's no problem. They like to work on autonomous cars anyway, so why not having one that you can guide through? But still, you know, it's like sounds a bit of a strange idea, isn't it? In a way, it's exactly the right experience. I know that if you would have cars like this, it would make life easier, and I know that I would have this car and I would step out in this street and lead it through, that it would be fun. But still, it feels nothing I would pay for. It feels nothing I would actually like to do in a way. So, and this is an example, one example for these problems. You know how to redesign a technology. You have a viable scenario, but it feels strange because it doesn't fit our ideas of how things should be. So I like these personal examples more. I think that people have theories of what makes them happy, and these pose different questions. My theories, for example, what really makes me happy is traveling. So this 2012, I had the chance to travel to Japan. I had this wonderful garden. I visited this wonderful garden at the Silver Pavilion in Kyoto, and I learned to know the culture through food. Yeah, I like to eat, and that was really, really a nice experience. One of the best experiences I had in 5 years or so. But actually, I'm a very anxious traveler. So everything that is different, which is not in Europe, makes me really nervous. And I also I was invited there to give a talk, but I didn't want to go. My wife didn't want to go. She said, we're not going. I'm divorcing you. We have to go there. I said, no, please not. It's so foreign. I don't want to go there. And then I was there, and it was really the best things I experienced. But I would never have done it on my own. It would never have come around, although it was so nice at home. Another example, I like to ride the bike. I like outdoor exercise. I like fresh air. I like doing this, but it's also not something I was born with. Actually, I went to the doctor. I felt bad. The doctor said, "Yeah, you're overweight. You drink too much alcohol. You eat too much sweets. You're not doing anything for you. You're not fit. Do something." And then I started to do it, and now it's really fun. But it wasn't at the beginning. And it took a while, and I would also never done it on my own. And these another example, relatedness love, we all know, these are my daughters, this is Peter, this is Alma. And again, I didn't blame them, I didn't ask for them. If we really would have sat down and said, do we want to have two children, I would never have happened. Biology works a little bit different, so now I have them. And I'm happy with them, so I wouldn't like to miss them, but it's nothing, you really would decide for, consciously maybe. So we have these different situations. We might not know what makes us happy before we actually try it. We have a faint idea that something could make us like a theory, but then it seems too much trouble or too complicated, never fit the schedule and stuff like that. And we also may know that something makes us happy, maybe more exercise, but it's not pleasurable. Not at the beginning, and maybe also not later. Yeah? But still, it's a good practice that makes us happy at the end. So we have this problem that we could try to cater for this. So experience design is not, at the beginning it was a lot about only pleasure and fun. But now it's getting a bit more complicated. It's more about healthy, meaningful, interesting experiences, which involves also some negative aspects. And maybe the need to convince people to do things that they wouldn't do. Like trying to support people in transforming themselves. There are persuasive technologies. There are some approaches in interaction design, especially for example in sustainability, where people, where it's the other way around. You don't make interactions that fit people and somehow amplify what they already want to do, but to create things and interactions which try to adapt people. Let them use less hot water, less energy, whatsoever. At the moment, most of that is just display technology. You just show people how much water they use, and then you hope that they understand that it could be a little bit less, you know, that you don't need 60 liters of hot water every day to take a shower. But the thing itself doesn't try to form it in any way. It's just still display information, not so much really helping people transforming them. But we think it's part of experience design to try that and to find the right aesthetics for this. So let me give you an example. And then I will like to show you the principles that are behind it. So the World Health Organization recommends using the bike for the daily commute. So if you don't have an exercise, the most simple thing is not to use the car to go to your work, but to walk or to take a walk. And then that's the way you can incorporate it in your daily life. In Germany, a lot of people commute, and they commute most of the time short distances, and they all take the car. But they could take the bike, but they don't. Although it's a very simple time. So we try to do something about that, and that's key moment. So you get it, yeah? When you take the car key, then the bike key drops. You have to pick it up, or you can leave it there, but you have to pick it up. And the idea is that the moment you have both keys, you might rethink your choice. There's a lot of knowledge built into that simple thing, whether you believe it or not. Yeah, a lot of principles built into that. For example, we know that from interviews, we know that many people that have bikes have the car key and the bike key at the same key ring. So they never pose themselves the question like that. They just, we go to the door, just grab the key and take the car as their routine. Yeah. So the first thing is that we try to separate these two keys. Make it a choice. You know, make it an explicit thing. You go there and you don't get it at once. You need to make sure either you have the car or you have the bike. So decide. Then still, you know, the routine may still be grabbing the car key. But then, in a way, some friction is created because the other key drops, and you can undo your decision. You can just leave it there. You know, it doesn't happen much. It doesn't hide the car key or holds the car key or anything. Yeah, it's not mean, but it tries to give you this moment where you rethink. This taking up exactly creates this gesture of, you know, and then yeah, you put it back and you do whatever you do. This is the idea, and for principle-wise, if you look at that, there are many very important things in it. First of all, we create some friction. If you want to change people, you can't do it with convenience. You have to create friction. You have to create this moment where people start to think, where something becomes a little bit uncomfortable. Otherwise, nothing will ever change. Otherwise, it will just remain the way it is. So how do we create this friction in a good way? The first thing is that situatedness. Many feedback systems which are available are not in any situation. They give often feedback later on. A typical example would be your telephone invoice. So you get it, maybe you get it once a month, yeah? And when you get it, you again think, I should have sent less SMS or have another package for my data transfer or whatsoever. But you get this feedback not in the situation. You get this feedback after the fact. Then you can try to plan for doing something different, but it will never happen, you know, because it remains an abstract thing. And then you get it after a month again, and you see that nothing much happened. With the energy invoices, it's even worse. I don't know how it is here, but in Germany you get it once a year. And I mean, you could look at your meter, but you know, what do I know about kilowatt hours? Nothing, so I have no idea. And if I want to save energy, I would need an extra, you know, that tries to make it more situated. The key holder is very, very situated. It's not a general brochure about more exercise. It's not a general sports app. It's a very, very specific thing in a very, very specific situation. Meant for this moment, you step out the door and you have to pay. And that's important, I think, to change anything, because then only then you're in the situation that people really understand it and have to act somehow. The next thing that's important is that that these things always embed an alternative. So if here it is car versus bike, it's not don't use the car. What else? I mean you could figure it out, but still, here it becomes a real simple choice. You know, there's something that is you can do both, and one is more in line with certain goals and that's presented through this object. So putting it side by side is not just a trick; it's a key design feature to exemplify that choice. But then, while it creates a new moment of choice, it never simplifies or restricts or so. You can still do whatever you want, and you have to do that choice on your own. In the EU, for example, most things that are thought up about sustainability are more like restriction or simplifying. So for example, the new regulation about the shower heads, which just use less water, they have no impact on you. You just shower, and you use less water, but nothing has changed for you. You have no insight, you have made no choice, no decision. It was just given to you by the EU. But with the promise that you don't have to worry, nothing, you have to change, you don't have to change anything. You can go on as you want, and we take care that you use less water. And to make sure we forbid all the old shower heads, and you have to buy this new one. That's the notion. But the problem is, and that's already well known, is the moment you know that this shower head saves water, you easily get the idea that now you could shower a little bit longer. It's called the rebound effect, and it's apparent everywhere. So we have energy-saving light bulbs, and what happens is that people consume more light. We have very efficient refrigerators, for example, now. What happens is that they buy larger ones. So in general, in Germany, for example, the energy consumption of refrigerators went up. Also, they became enormously more energy efficient because people now have really, really huge refrigerators in their flats and store all that stuff in there, and nothing really has happened. So I think it's very important that when you want to change people, that you find a situation where they do that on their own, so to say. Don't make objects that take the decisions from them, but make objects that fosters them or inspires them to make this decision or think about this decision. And that's the next point, meaning making. So it's not only about changing it, it's about getting you to think about it and to make it a conscious decision. We have this key moment, the key holder, in another version where also the key drops, and it's featured on Wired, and we got a lot of comments, and people they're saying things like, it wouldn't work for me because I would learn that the key drops and I would catch it the moment it drops, or stuff like that. It's fine, you know, because it still means that you have this as an option, taking the bike. It's still there, you are still thinking about it. And eventually, hopefully, you might catch the key and also use it. That's the idea. The problem with this is that it's a bit, you know, it's a bit overdone. So imagine my students often, they often ask me, so how many of these objects can I have in my household? You know, how much can I stand of this educational stuff, although it's well meant or so. And you need to create friction, but it can be overwhelming. And what happens is, it's also very old psychological concepts. You get reactance. So when somebody tells you what to do, although you would normally do it, you don't want to do it just because somebody tells you to do it. And that's reactance. So you end up doing something that is not in line with your own goals just because you want to retain your own autonomy. I guess everybody of you had this, this experience eventually. So that's the second part of this aesthetics of these principles, is we need to create friction but in a light way. There's research showing that reactance is not so bad if we like the communicator, if we can identify with the communicator, if we think we're similar to them, if they're likable, if they're nice, if they do it in the right way. So we again we're again at that moment where it's about the how. You know, how does this object deliver the friction? And how can you make a thing more liked or more empathetic or so? Yeah, is that what strategies are there? We use actually 3. One is naivety. We never do smart objects. A smart object means that the object is better than you. So the smart calorie counting fitness app is just implying that you're dumb enough not to be in control of that, and it's doing it for you. These objects try to do the other way around. They try to appear a bit silly, a bit naive. Can you really change anything with that? But the idea is that through this naivety, people more easy submit to this situation. It's like with a strange friend, and he asks you to do things, and you like it first, so it's naive, but you do it, but you end up doing things you would never done before. So that's the bit of the idea. If you try to make it very intelligent, then it can be really overwhelming. Another thing we try is understanding. So we never create a choice which requires superhuman powers. A key holder that would, lock your car keys, or where you have to solve a puzzle every time you want to get it, or anything like this wouldn't be the point. Understanding means that you understand that there are certain situations where you can live up to your ideals, and that there are situations you can't live up to your ideals. And it's not wrong, if you took, let's say you took 5 times a week a bike, and then 2 times a car, it's still better than 3 times a car, it's still better than 4 times a car. That's the idea here. So in the key moment explicitly gives you this choice. And we have another version which is weather dependent. So it works like when you're, it doesn't have this dropping mechanism, but when the weather is good, the bike key comes out and the car key goes a bit into the back. And the weather is bad, it's the other way around. I think it's quite understandable. The object says, I know, bike is good, but it's raining. Come on, I understand, you can take the car. But in the case the sun is shining, it says, you have no real reason to do it, why don't you just try it? And that's the type of understanding I mean. Another example of understanding is in the research on alcoholics, for example. The thing is that when you're addicted, the typical strategy is to teetotal, to not drink any alcohol at all. And every single drink you would take counts as a relapse for yourself psychologically. Oh, I relapsed, and then you can go on a drinking spree. And this is the problem of an alcoholic in general. Research shows that teetotaling is really, really complicated. So it's like it needs a lot of effort because there are many, many social situations where moderate drinking would be really good. Like just one glass of wine, not 10, but one to relax you, whatever, yeah? Because it has some positive effects as well. An object that knows this would try not to forbid people to drink, but would try to encapsulate a body, find a simple plan to make people drink less. One of the typical tricks, for example, is to have, when you're a beer drinker, to have a large glass of mineral water before you order the next beer. You can't drink that much, like, I mean, many people can drink a lot, but then it's the difference between having 10 liters beer or 5 liters beer and 5 liters water. Full at the end, but you had only half of the alcohol, for example. It's a quite easy trick. And now if you think of an object that would encapsulate that, so like, for example, a bar that always serves a large mineral water with a beer, then you have a very understanding setting. Nobody says don't drink at all, but you have this way, an easy way to change something. That's understanding. And the last thing we use is irony and ambiguity. Maybe you noticed in the key moment you have these both key fobs, but you can also, you could also change that. Yeah?
I have a question about when you actually use it for the second time or more than once, then you actually know that the key drops. So when you go to take the key, you actually make the decision before you take the key. So what if you actually already have made the decision that you want to take the car and you kind of know that it drops or whatever, but
there are many ways of handling this. Yeah. So one thing is that you could just reverse it. Okay. So you know that you never want to take the bike. Yeah. So you put the car key there. It always happens, and then you can have this this special trick. The moment you take the bike key, it pulls out the car and it's I'm allowed. So that's allowed by the object. That would be one version. It's also like you saw, maybe it's like a bit like a shelf. The thing, it's like you can't see that, but it's protruded. It's like it's this it has like a shelf on top. That's meant that you can put the bike key on it. So if you really know that you don't want to take the car, you just take it out and put it there. You still have it there, but the mechanism is switched off.
In the end, is it a matter of design to do it so good that you every time have kind of an option, or if you get used to it?
When you get used to it,
You still
I
have
think it's
the
already
decision,
then you're already there. So the problem is when you already anticipate that, you already make conscious choices. The object is a little bit for the routine situations where you just mindlessly crack the one key and then it goes bing and yeah, I remember, But when you already really consciously anticipate it, then the mechanism will not be activated that often, but it goes on in your head. So you will try to find ways to do it differently.
Okay, but in the end, if you really still hope that you would take the bike, but every time you're still too lazy and you kind of reconsider in the last moment, so would you argue that it's a matter of design to make it so good that you would actually have the decision every day, or it's just to make the person think about it?
Yeah, I don't really understand. It's a matter of design, the way you design it, but then if your conclusion would be, for example, that you play a different melody each time, or make it more interesting or something like this, to don't get it into a routine, that wouldn't be the thing I would see in that object here. It's a matter of design, what it actually happens, and whether it then has an effect on you. but you don't have to make it interesting. I don't know whether this was the question or...
Just putting myself in this situation,
Yeah.
and let's say I would like to take the bike every day, but it's like if I don't have the device at all, I would still maybe think that would I take the car or would I take the bike, and then I'm too lazy and I secretly decide that I take the car and I go and take the car. And if you have this device now on the wall, you might hope that it will make a difference, but still you kind of 9 out of 10 times you still take the car.
Yeah, but then imagine that situation. So you said you want to do that, want to take the bike, but you secretly decided to take the car. In your normal situation without that, yeah, it's very easy to live that out, yeah, because you secretly decided that, but you have it all on a key ring. There is no moment where you need to negotiate that somehow. But here you must, because your keys are there, you know, and then either you take the decision to put the bicycle key out, which will be a constant reminder of the fact that you don't do what you actually wanted to do, that you try to cheat yourself, yeah? Or maybe you mastered a very good trick, or you just leave it on the floor. It's still, you still need to consciously relate to it. You can't just do what you normally do when you don't do things you actually want to do, to shut them out. You know, that's the key. That's the key here. There's a mechanical version of it, and this you can trick by taking when you take the car key very careful, then it wouldn't work. That's the way to cheat it. But that also means that to make you slow down the interaction, you slow down this moment, you secretly decide that you do that, you know that you should do that, and then you need to do that very carefully.
I think
it will do something to you, you know?
I think that answered my question, because I was thinking that is it more about design or is it just to make the decision, you know?
No, it's about the thing will change your way of thinking.
The better design, the more possibility I have to take the bike then.
But the feeling is still something that you've done it, and the feeling is still should be something that's this irony and ambiguity. I can also give you another example in a minute. I think that makes it a bit clearer. It's about relaxing that a bit. So you shouldn't think of this thing as as an enemy. Imagine the version where you always, when you go through the door, it shouts, "You loser! You take the bike!" And the whole house is hearing it. That's not the idea. The idea is that it's like a bit of annoying, but also nice, and you're standing in front of it as I know that I should do it. Maybe I do it. This kind of feeling, and that's in the design. That's a consequence of design, and not a consequence of your choices alone. At least I hope. Another example for this ambiguity irony, we have a system which helps cleaning up the desk. So are there really messy people here? So the problem with cleaning up your desk is that like teetotaling, the common idea is that the desk is that tidying up means that you have a clear desk, which is not true. If you arrange everything in order, then it looks tidy, and it creates some structure, and you can do that also while working. Because the typical problem with messy desk is that people say, "I'm not finished yet, I'm not ready yet, I will do that at the end," and then they never come around, But if you would line things up, all the red pens left, all the blue pens, and then it becomes a more aesthetically pleasing thing. So we made a little system, like we realized it with a little beamer that projected, for example, a line on the desk. Just a simple line. And what you do when you have a line, you start to put things, for example, above the line, or a grid, and then people start to put it along the grid. We found that before because we asked people to tidy up without putting it away, and what they used the borders of the desk to align things, and they did color coding, and they color sorting, and they had containers. And very quickly, in 3 minutes or so, it made a very aesthetically pleasing impression, but nothing was really tidied away, so it was still great. So all these things are there, and when it's really messy, it gives you that line and suggests, why don't you, and then you can start keep on working. That would be the friction part maybe, and it would also help a bit. But there's also, and this object is by a student of mine, it's called do/panic, do/panic, so this was a do part, but sometimes you're really overwhelmed by all this mess, and you don't want to handle it. So it has a panic button, and when you put panic, then it will project a pattern that kind of, and the mess vanishes. It's so complicated that you can't see much of the mess there, yeah? So we try that out, and then you have this, it looks like, for example, if you make a break, you put this, press the button, and when you're sitting here, it looks okay. Yeah, it looks like a nice picture, and you can't see all that. And after 20 minutes, that goes away. So you have like an out time. You can also accept that you don't feel like doing it at that moment. And this is a kind of irony to put a functionality in an object which is actually for another purpose, which makes the things more you can handle them easier. They become more nicer. So let me just show you, at the end, 3 examples of these objects. Just have a look and then I say something.
In der Maschinensprache.
So what is about is, and I have to explain that, it's in the course, in the design courses, we often ask, this is the student, we often ask the students to pick one person to inquire into a problem they have, something they want to change, and then design something for this person. Yeah, so it's a one-on-one thing, but using the principle. And this woman, she said that when she's doing work here on the desk, and she's nibbling, for example, crisps, she's eating and eating and eating, and at the end of the day, she ate the whole bowl and can't even remember doing it. So it wasn't really about eating much less. It was more about, when I eat all these calories, at least let me have a memory of it. Yeah? So then it made me a little bit more conscious. And he then, first thing, as from the experience down, he first tried out different interactions. What could a bowl do to make it more conscious? And then he built a little functional prototype and also tried it out. But it never reached the stage of final design. So first we see examples of how they tried out the interaction that is possible, and then you will see the object.
Das macht mich kirre. Das begreift.
So this, for example, make it more difficult to open it.
Kommt ja auf. Wie kommt ihr mit echt?
So after 10 times, we use it, I didn't want to show it 10 times, we use it 10 times, then it turns away. But yeah, the understanding or the thing is that it even has a mechanism to open automatically. So the first thing you would think, make it more difficult, to get into. No, it's like very inviting. And you do it all the time, but then after, the moment you've got a routine in it, it does this other thing to create some friction, and you can't be really angry at it. So I write it down on my desk. It's like, remember that again 10 times I was there. Like it gives you count, it gives you a reaction, but you never. It's not. You can't really be angry about it. This is also not a mechanism you can switch off, but I think that this understanding is, for example, in automatically opening it. It's like very inviting. You go there and get whoop, and yeah, it's okay. So next example is, if you have questions, you just I don't know how much I should go into detail, but I think it's quite obvious. This thing is more for sustainability. Here it's about standby power.
Well, the market is universal. Today, how to do so. We have a hotel, yeah? Let's do it. Yeah.
And the only thing you can do is to switch off the power completely, and then it relaxes. It's like a caterpillar or so that suffers when you're on standby. Again, they have to, how meaningful is that? Yeah. But we tried it out. So we did a study with it and compared this with the multi-socket. I mean, there's a switch on it as well, so you can do exactly the same without this as a display technology. But the first thing that happens is that you have this like friction, you have this ambiguous feelings. So on one hand, people find it strange that it does that. It creates strange ideas. It's a bit of annoying. But on the other hand, it's like a little creature, and they feel this urge to do something about it. Like it's like I have to do something about this thing. Not just crushing it, so like doing something about it. The multi-socket, there is no feeling at all. It's like it's flat. Yeah, it's a very usable thing. Maybe I could press the button, but maybe not. Here it creates friction, and through these animal-like features, it becomes something variable. So it appeals to you helping it somehow. That's what people said when they use it. So I want to do something about this. I want to help it somehow. This poor little thing, and then you disconnect it. And it's done. But this thing can sense standby power, so it could just switch it off. It was very easy just to do it in this way. But it's important here, as an example, to let you go through this reasoning, because when we did this study, they were in the lab and they were supposed to do something completely different. And they were supposed to watch a video with sound and without sound, and then know something, produce something that happened in that video. And we told them, and when you're ready and when you have the questionnaire ready, switch off the television and come to the experimenter. And then they did all that stuff for, for half an hour. Then they switched it off, and then this thing went off, and they, what should I do? And some fled, and some tried to figure it out, and so on. And then we asked them about this object, what it means, without any explanations of what it means. And they all got the relationship to sustainability, to using power. They understand. Most of them understand that it was driven by the standby. They reasoned and said, I should have gone back and maybe switch it off completely. Just because this thing created a situation where you started to think differently about it. It also not embodies all principles of these pleasurable troublemakers I was talking about, but here I think it's very good. This meaning making you can see is quite good here. And now the last example, which is about procrastination. Procrastination is when you're not doing things now, but doing them later, which happens occasionally.
Hi. Ist nicht so einfach.
It's not so easy to do something.
Oma, ja, ist der Ladung. Ja, Oma, du, ich melde mich so in 2 Wochen nochmal bei dir, okay? Tschüss.
I think you get the idea. This object encapsulates a lot of knowledge about how to avoid procrastination. So typical recommendations for a procrastinator are, a mild procrastinator are, don't have too many goals. So the number of hooks here is limited. You can't, because typically what procrastinators do, they have to-do lists which have a lot of entries, and they never get around doing it because they have to organize the to-do lists instead of that. So focus on the 8 things you want to do more often. And then you have this, it's not so precise. I mean, it's a month on turn, it's a month, but you don't have to be too exact with your dates. You know, it's like you can do it a bit in between, and you don't have to be too precise, which is good. But at the end, it has a consequence because it drops down, and you eventually, if you don't care about anything, then it will be on the floor. So there's a consequence in the end, which is feelable, tangible. And the other thing is that you always see all your goals. Well, this is the annoying part of it, so to say. Yeah? For somebody who's procrastinating, it's much easier if the things are stored away somewhere in a to-do list, yeah? But not visible all the time. On the other hand, what are the the soothing things is that it, in a way, it also invites procrastination. So it's built in interaction. You know, you can lift it up very easily and can just push it another day further, and you don't have to do it. You can always procrastinate it. Yeah, so it's not, the object doesn't force you to do anything, but to avoid that it falls down, you have to touch it. And you have to think about, okay, so it becomes a conscious decision to procrastinate and not just something that happens to you. Yeah? All this is built into this object. This is a design concept, but we built it. It's like functional. And we did a study with it. We found a mild procrastinator and gave it to this person for 2 weeks, had a baseline measurement, did interviews, and just saw what happened, and more importantly, how she reacted on this object. And it was interesting because many of the things we hope for in this troublemakers happened. So she never felt like forced or so by it. It became something like a partner, more or less, something that helps along but is also understanding. That's how she said it in the end. At the beginning, she was very skeptical. She said, I will never change. But eventually, these 8 things she set out to do, she did it more often. She did a very conscious choice of what to do. And it helped her along, so to say. Yeah? She was unsure what happens when we took it, so mean, unethical. We took it away then, the object, yeah? And asked her 2 weeks later. And 2 weeks later, her behavior was still present, but we didn't. We have to catch up now again to see what happened, whether it had a lasting effect or not. And it's also just a single person, so we did very deep phenomenological, experience-oriented study. But it has all the consequences we wanted to design in it, most of the time. And we found some additional things we did differently. For example, you saw that Lalo, even in this video, when he did the sports, he just moved it over the barrier and put it then on the right side. Which I always have to laugh about it because it actually means the next time I do the sports is in a month. Which is not, you should actually move it to the left, instead of over the barrier. But that became, that was also like a natural behavior of that person that tried it out, because we didn't get, she just used it as she pleased, yeah? So she picked the place and she used it as she pleased, and we tried to figure out whether it was the way we hoped for. And she found it deeply satisfying to do something and then to put it over this barrier and to store it there. So now the new version has a region right of the barrier where you can put the books, and then you can decide when to do it the next time. Just because it seems so nice to have avoided this falling down. Basically also this falling down is like, it's like a bit like this, the key, it's the same principle, so we force people to deal with it by littering the floor. You can still, kick it under the carpet or just forget about it, but most people like to pick it up. And in this trial, it happened only twice. So the first time, the second time it fell down, then she avoided it by procrastinating or by doing it. But it didn't drop down again. That was something she wanted to avoid. And that was also the key that changed behaviors. The moment she started out exactly like procrastinators do, put their goals and then forget about it, maybe looking at it in the morning and then, but the first moment that dropped, she knew that it has consequences. If she don't do anything at the end of the trial, all the 8 books will lie on the floor and doesn't feel good. So she picked it up and then she started to do stuff, and then it happened only once again. So it's maybe also more thing that happens in the head. Yeah. That's why I was a bit uncertain about your question before, because actually this function, this action doesn't happen that much. You already anticipated, and this is the part that changes your behavior. There's another, I like this example as also just to show you that you saw now, I'm now at the end, you saw a lot of physical objects, and you might come to the conclusion that this does not apply in any way to digital objects. But that's not true. We are in the moment in the making of making an app out of Remind. And the only thing you need to solve here is, there are 2 things you need to solve. It will not be so good as this because it's not always on display. So you have to start it as an app, and it's somewhere hidden in your phone. So one part of the power of this physical object is lost, this permanent visibility. You also have problems in littering. You know, we want to drop the task you don't do on the lock screen of the phone, which depends a bit on the system to do it, but that would be the equivalent. Yes, it's littering but it's not that physical. On the other hand, our books are already task-oriented. So imagine this book where Lalo wrote "Call my grandmother." You could press the button and then the call would be initiated. That is something you could do in the digital world, which is a very nice addition because it lowers the barrier to actually do it. Yeah? You touch it, and the moment you touch it, you could also just do it, yeah? Because it's a digital thing. So it has advantages and disadvantages. And you can transport it, but you can transport the basic principles in every world. So we also have almost ready a Firefox plugin, which has this kind of task list in the top. And if you don't care about the stuff, the goals, the tasks you want to do, they drop down and litter your Facebook page, for example. So they literally, bounce around when they go down. It's the same principle, and again we try to find a place where it really hurts a bit. So it's not stored away, but you use often. People use their browsers. It's integrated in the browser, not because browser is convenient, but because browser gives you the possibility to have a consequence. Yeah? You could also put this calendar into the cabinet or so, then it wouldn't work. Also the physical thing you have to put on display somewhere where it hurts. Yeah? If you put it somewhere in the cellar, then it can't unfold its power. Just to say that all the things you saw, I'm working in industrial design, so I'm obliged to do a little bit more physical stuff. But I did user interface design before. I did digital products before. We do digital products now even. And I know that all what you saw is not bound to physical stuff. It can be translated. It will be a bit different, but the principles are the important things. So let me conclude. So one misconception of experience is often that it's about products or technology that feels good. Yeah, so that the wonderful way of interacting with your iPhone is actually experience design. That's not my word. It's not about that about technology that feels good. It's about that people feel good, but not because of this technology, but because of what they can do, what they can experience, what kind of stories are told to that through that technology. So I try to avoid positive experiences that stem from the object. So if somebody says to me, "Oh, that's such an exciting phone because it has a wonderful color," and I don't know, then you see that this excitement, the need for it, comes from the first contact with the object. But my version of experience design is about when you have this tool and you use it in your daily life, what positive experience will emerge? And do they feel good? Or are they appropriate or are they not appropriate? It's quite a difference, I think. And in user experience design, it's often quite mixed. Most of the practical stuff is about making the object more experiential, fancy, or whatever that means, and not so much thinking about what you do with the object. That's also, because that's so important for me, I always think of the object and the story as an intangible and tangible part of the same thing. So when I talk about artifact, it's not only the material form, it's also the experience you envision. Yeah? That's also important because the ideal is that you have very nice complex experiences but very, very simple technologies. I think you could already see that. I'm not going for fancy technologies. Sometimes you need it, I'm not against it. But I always try to make it as simple as possible. And by the key holder is with Arduino and magnets, and it's just very nice when it pushes it out. But the mechanic version has no electronics at all. And just works on a mechanical basis and costs €3 in making. I like the later version better because it's still the same experiences, but it needs much less technology, much less. From a discipline, I always like to tell the story that when I do it with Arduino and magnets, I get accepted in a human-computer interaction journal. If I do it mechanically, they say it's not human-computer interaction. So from an interaction design perspective, for me it's both interaction design. It's even the same concept. It's a similar interaction. And it doesn't matter whether there is a chip in it or whether there is mechanics in it. And that's an important message. Just to get across. It's also not about the functionality per se. I'm convinced that everything, almost everything is there somehow. Now, we can make it more complicated, but in a way, most technology is there. So I'm really kind of bored when people say, "Oh, it's already possible." Yeah, it's already possible. But the challenge is not that something is in principle possible and somebody can figure it out eventually if they have enough insight into the technology. The design work is about using the functionality that is there and the interactions that are possible and spinning these stories out of them. So for me, it's a big difference whether the object makes it with you or whether you just got the idea to do it with it. The one is the first is the designerly work. Yeah? So I'm envisioning an experience and try to get it across. The other is just I give you building blocks, Lego, and you came up with something nice, which is a difference from a design perspective. And the last thing is, that's why I also started with happiness, which is maybe a bit unusual. It's really, for me, it's really about making people happy, which is a burden in a way. It's a high ideal. It's blah blah blah. It's a bit guru-like self-help stuff, you know, like, oh, I want to make the world more happy and people more happy. I think we can't avoid it because everything is experienced. So you eventually, whatever you do, you make them happy or make them unhappy, whether you want to do it or whether you plan for it or not. So it's not negotiable. You know, it's like it happens. You can either try to take the responsibility or not, and I think we should take the responsibility and care about it. Okay, that's it. Thank you for your patience. I'm open for questions if you have questions. If not, if you're invited to send me an email or check my blog.
A question: you have probably thought a lot about self-driving cars.
Yeah.
And and experiences they are creating, like they are probably encapsulating you a bit more or making you more distance from the things. At the same time, possibly giving you more shows of time. Or what are your insights into this?
So when my first project at BMW was not with self-driving cars but semi-automation, like for example. Adaptive cruise control, so where the car is, you put it on a speed and then it keeps the distance. Mm-hmm. And but what it does is, like any automation, it takes away the driving experience. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit strange, you know, if you have a brand that revolves around driving experience and what you actually do is design it away. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So from a premium car perspective, where people buy things because they want to try it, it's a bit strange. But still, you can have situations where you switch it on because you don't want to drive, and then you can more consciously do the manual driving or something like that. The problem that happens then is, what do people do when they don't drive? So what do you do in a car when you don't drive? And this is a good, this could be a good play field for experience design. Because now you could think of all the things you could do beside driving in a car. We know, for example, that people have very, very good chats in a car. So it's a very nice situation where you can talk. You can also try to experience the environment more, stuff like that. And this would be something that could be then technologically mediated. So it's not a matter of whether this car is whether it's the matter of how you use this technology. What is the story that you tell with it? Is it the story of the car drives for you, but then I have a very good alternative of what you're doing, and then the self-driving is just like a hygiene factor, an enabler for the other stuff? Or is this the key? Do you just leave it to people, or is the self-driving only used when the car finds its next user or whatever? You know, it's very important how to use it. But Google, for example, never tries to be too precise about that. You know? They put it out, and then I think all the fuss you have about it is just that people that are a bit technology interested, they find it an interesting science fiction idea that cars can drive on their own. It's like a good engineering solution. But when it's there, they will start with these questions of, you know, what actually does it to me and to my life?
Yeah, so we can actually expect that during the test driving of Google cars, Google has also collected tremendous amounts of information about what's happening inside the car and what the people are doing, which is
and tailoring their information offerings to exactly do that.
So maybe they're just using self-driving cars to find better car entertainment systems.
Exactly, yeah. But then still, the fuss is about that the car can do that, and not so much about what it will enable. And an experience design perspective would be more about that. So I'm very positive about it. So we did for BMW, for example, we did interfaces for commuting, and we did studies what do people do when they commute and what they want to do, and they don't. One thing they don't want to do there is driving. So a self-driving car would be very good there. But then, you know, like you go there, you need to be sure that you want to be that you're in time. For example, when you go to your work, people try to anticipate what's going on there. When they go back, they are social. Many people say that's the only, especially people that live in families, that's the time where I have contact with my friends. So they call up their friends, and all that could be supported in a way through a nice system. Just because the car is not, you don't need to drive. I think it's a bit sad that if you would hand out these ideas, although it's much more fitting, you wouldn't create the same buzz like I think with the idea that a car can fly or self-drive. That's a bit stuff we have we still, you know, from the last century, like disbelief in technology or something.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You're tired now. Okay, thank you for your attention. It was really nice.